I still taste copper when I think of the Imperium. Not blood, though there was plenty of that later, but something older, something that has no business touching human tongues. Metallic and sweet, like sucking on coins dug from grave soil. It clings to the back of my throat even now, decades after my last translation, here in this sealed chamber where they keep me. Where they've always kept me, I suppose, though the walls have changed and the restraints have grown tighter, and my name has been struck from every record that ever bore it. My name. I remember having one. The memory sits in my skull like a tooth that's been knocked loose, still present, still mine, but no longer properly attached to anything. House Meridius, that much I know. Third born of the Navigator bloodline, which meant I was valuable but not irreplaceable, not precious. The Navis Nobilite doesn't waste sentiment on tertiary heirs. We're tools, same as any cogitator or auspex array, just wetter and more prone to madness. They measure our worth in successful translations and profitable routes, and they discard us when we see things we shouldn't. I saw things I shouldn't. The first sign that something was wrong came during a routine translation through the segmentum obscurus. Routine, I laugh at that word now, bitter and sharp in my mouth like the taste that never leaves. There's nothing routine about opening your third eye and staring into the raw stuff of chaos, into that impossible ocean where physics drowns and reality comes apart like wet parchment. But after 37 years of service to the merchant Lord Hesperus, aboard the trader-hauler times dividend of faith asterisk, I'd learned to call it routine. I'd learned to pretend that gazing into madness was just another duty, like checking pressure seals or attending the captain's devotional. The times dividend times was hauling promethium and munitions to the forges of Cypra Mundi, a 6-week journey through relatively stable warp currents. My chamber sat at the ship's heart, a sphere of blackened iron inscribed with wards that I'd long since stopped reading, stopped believing in. The crew called it the Navigator's sanctum. I called it a cell with better visibility. 3 servitors attended me during translations, silent things, with their eyes replaced by brass shutters, their minds scraped clean of anything that might look where it shouldn't. They fed me stims and recaf, monitored my vital signs, and would kill me instantly if I showed signs of possession. I'd always thought that last precaution was paranoid. Navigators don't get possessed. Our third eye sees the Astronomicon, the Emperor's light burning across the galaxy. We're proof against corruption because we're already marked, already changed, already claimed by something older than the ruinous powers. That's what they taught me in the training basilica on Terra. That's what I believed when I first opened my warp eye and saw the golden thread stretching across impossible distance. I didn't believe it any more after transition 8-7 Gamma. The translation began normally. I'd fasted for 6 hours, purged my system of anything that might cloud my vision. The servitors strapped me into the observation throne, a baroque thing of iron and leather that held me suspended in the center of the chamber. The ship's Geller field hummed to life around us, that familiar vibration that made my teeth ache and my third eye water before I even opened it. The field would protect the ship, keep reality's skin intact around us while we swam through unreality, keep the crew from seeing what I saw, from knowing what I knew. Captain Vross's voice crackled over the vox. Navigator Meridius, we are prepared for translation. The Emperor protects. The Emperor protects, I responded, the words automatic as breathing. Then I opened my third eye. The Immaterium rushed in. I've tried to explain this to the Inquisitors who questioned me later, tried to make them understand what it means to navigate the warp. How do you describe color to the blind? How do you explain the taste of sound, the texture of thought, the weight of hunger that thinks and hates and wants? The warp isn't a place. It's a state, a condition, a disease that thinks it's an ocean. And we swim through it because we have no choice, because humanity's empire spans too many stars, and normal space is too slow and too cold and too honest. The Astronomicon blazed ahead, golden and pure, a pillar of psychic fire burning from Terra itself. I'd seen it thousands of times. It was my compass, my anchor, My guarantee that I could find my way through the screaming chaos of the Imperium and emerge somewhere real, somewhere that obeyed laws and had dimensions, and didn't reshape itself according to the whims of thirsting gods. But that day, I saw something else. It was small at first. A shadow moving across the Astronomican's light, like a ship crossing in front of a sun. Except ships don't exist in the warp. Not really, they're bubbles of reality held together by prayer and desperation. And they don't cast shadows. This wasn't a ship. It was something that moved in the Imperium itself. Something that belonged there. Something vast enough to momentarily occlude humanity's greatest psychic beacon. I should have closed my eye. Should have aborted the translation, pulled us back into real space, reported the anomaly to the Navis Nobilite. Should have done anything except what I actually did, which was lean forward in my restraints and look closer. The shadow had texture, structure. Not the writhing, impossible geometries of daemon form, but something organized, purposeful. It moved with deliberate grace, sliding through the warp's currents like a leviathan through deep water. And as it passed across the Astronomican, I saw. The memory fractures here, breaks into pieces that don't fit together right. The Inquisitors thought I was lying when I struggled to describe it. They thought I was protecting heretical knowledge, hiding corruption. But I'm not lying. I'm just trying to translate something that existed in a dimension where words don't work, where concepts like above and inside and geometry are suggestions rather than rules. It was a structure, a building, maybe, or a machine, or a city, or all three and none. It existed in the warp, but it was organized like something from real space, something designed, black iron and brass and glass that shouldn't exist, forming towers that stretched in directions that had no names. And throughout it, moving with purpose, were things that might have been human once, might have been. Shapes that suggested limbs and faces and tools, but rendered in materials that hurt to perceive. Brass cables where veins should be, clockwork hearts, eyes like burning coals. And they were building something. I don't know how long I stared. Time doesn't work the same in the warp, and my perceptions were already stretched across non-Euclidean space. Could have been seconds, could have been hours. The servitors later reported that I'd been silent for 43 minutes, my vital signs stable, my third eye tracking something they couldn't see. 43 minutes of watching that impossible construction site, that factory of souls, that place where something was taking human form and twisting it into something else. Then the shadow passed. The Astronomican burned clear again, and I plotted our course to Cipra Mundi with shaking hands. I didn't report what I'd seen. This was my first mistake, though I didn't know it then. I told myself it was a vision, a hallucination, a phantasm thrown up by the warp's chaotic currents. Navigators see things. We see gods and daemons, and our own deaths playing out in infinite variations. We see the past bleeding through from dead worlds, and the future screaming in languages that haven't been invented yet. We see lies that are true and truths that kill. It's part of the job. We're trained to look past it, to focus on the Astronomican and ignore everything else. So I ignored it. We made translation without incident, delivered our cargo, took on new freight. The captain logged a flawless journey. I collected my stipend and retreated to my chamber to meditate and pray and pretend that my hands weren't shaking. The second sighting came 3 weeks later. We were hauling grain to Scintilla, a shorter jump through well-traveled routes. I'd drunk the ritual stims, spoken the ritual prayers, opened my third eye with practiced ease. The Astronomican shone ahead, beautiful and terrible, and I began plotting our course through the Imperium's tides. The shadow crossed the light again, closer this time. Much closer. Close enough that I could see details I'd missed before. The structure wasn't just large, it was impossible in scale, stretching across psychic distance that had no physical equivalent. And it was growing. New towers rose even as I watched, constructed from materials that looked like condensed suffering. The builders moved faster now, with desperate urgency, and I realized with sick certainty that they were working to some kind of deadline. I forced myself to look away, to focus on navigation, to do my job, but my third eye kept drifting back, pulled by fascination or horror or both. And this time, I noticed something else. The structure was anchored, not floating freely through the warp like a derelict or a daemon conjuration, but tethered to something in real space. I could see the threads stretching out from its foundations, golden and black, binding it to specific locations in the material universe. Thousands of threads, millions, each one pulsing with psychic energy, with souls flowing up them like blood through veins. I traced one thread back to its source, watched it spiral down through layers of unreality until it touched something solid, something real, a world. I couldn't see which one. The warp doesn't give you that kind of precision, but I could feel its nature. Industrial, populated, productive, a forge world or a hive world, somewhere with billions of souls all working, all serving, all feeding that distant structure with their pain and faith and desperate hope. That's when I understood. This wasn't some alien construct, wasn't some demon's architecture or Xeno's abomination. The style was wrong for that. Too organized, too familiar. Those towers rose in the same aesthetic as imperial cathedrals. Those workers moved with the same purposeful rhythm as servitors in Manufactorum. And those threads, those golden black lifelines, connecting structure to worlds, they looked like prayer. I closed my third eye so fast I gave myself a nosebleed. The servitors moved to attend me, but I waved them away, gasping in my restraints. The copper taste was back in my mouth, stronger now, and underneath it something else. Incense, promethium, the smell of a billion candles burning in a billion shrines. Navigator Meridius, Captain Vross's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. Is everything well? We're registering unusual brainwave activity. Everything's fine, I lied. Just a minor fluctuation. We'll reach Scintilla on schedule. We did. I plotted perfectly, mechanically, forcing myself not to look at anything except the Astronomican's pure light. But I knew I'd look again. Knew I had to look again, because what I'd seen wasn't just impossible, it was familiar. It resonated with something deep in my navigator's instincts, with the genetic modifications that let me perceive the Empyrean. I'd seen something that was part of the Imperium itself. Something fundamental. Something that we all of us, navigator and common crew and lord and serf, were feeding with our very existence. The third sighting happened 4 days later, during what should have been a milk run to a nearby station. I opened my third eye and the structure was waiting for me, vast and terrible. No longer a shadow crossing the Astronomican, but a presence in its own right. And this time, one of the builders turned and looked back. I don't know how I knew it was looking at me. It had no eyes that I could recognize, just a face of hammered brass with symbols carved deep into the metal. But I felt its attention like a physical weight, like being pinned beneath a falling spire. It stared at me across the impossible distance between warp and navigator's sanctum, and then it raised something that might have been a hand or might have been a tool. It beckoned. The scream that tore from my throat was involuntary, animal, pure. The servitors immediately moved to sedate me, but I fought them, thrashing in my restraints hard enough to crack the iron. Blood ran from my third eye, hot and copper-tasting. My mouth was full of that flavor now, drowning in it. And beneath it all, I could hear something like machinery grinding, like prayers spoken by throats that were no longer human. Abort translation. I managed to choke out. Abort. Pull us back to real space now. Captain Vross, to his credit, didn't hesitate. Emergency procedures engaged. The Geller field contracted. The Times dividend of faith Times tore itself out of the warp with a violence that killed 3 crew members and left half the ship's systems damaged. But we made it. We returned to real space in an uncharted region, days from any scheduled coordinates, alive. I spent 2 weeks in the Medicae Bay after that. They called it Navigator's madness, a not uncommon affliction among my kind. Too much time staring into the warp, too many translations in too short a period, too much exposure to the raw stuff of chaos. The treatment was sedation, prayer, and mandatory rest. I accepted it gratefully, desperate for any explanation that didn't require me to think about what I'd actually seen. But rest didn't help. The copper taste never left, and when I closed my eyes, all three of them, I could still see that figure beckoning, patient and inevitable. When I was cleared for duty again, I tried to refuse, told Captain Vross I needed extended leave, that my navigator's eye was damaged, that I was a danger to the ship. He looked at me with something like pity and reminded me that House Meridius held my contract, that refusing duty was grounds for immediate termination, and that terminated navigators rarely lived long enough to regret their decision. So I returned to my chamber, strapped myself into the throne, let the servitors administer their stims and attach their monitoring cables, opened my third eye. The structure filled my vision immediately, no longer distant but immediate. I was inside it somehow, or it was inside me, or both. The builders worked around me, their brass faces turning to regard me with empty sockets. They didn't beckon this time. They simply waited, as if my arrival had been expected all along, and I understood, with the clarity of absolute horror, that they were building this place from faith, from prayer, from the concentrated psychic energy of humanity's devotion to the God Emperor. Every plea for protection, every desperate prayer from a dying soldier, every candle lit in a billion shrines, it all flowed here, was consumed here, was transformed into whatever this structure was becoming. The Astronomicon wasn't just a beacon. It was a drain, a psychic siphon pulling souls and faith and hope toward terror, yes, but also feeding something else. Something that wore the Imperium symbols, that mimicked its architecture, that presented itself as an extension of Imperial authority while being something fundamentally other. I tried to pull away, to close my third eye, to retreat into the safety of my physical body. But something held me. The brass-faced builders moved closer, their tools gleaming, and I realized they were preparing to add me to their construction, to incorporate my navigator's gifts into whatever they were building, to make me a permanent fixture of this impossible place. That's when I did something unforgivable, something that would mark me as heretic and madman, that would end my house's protection and doom me to this cell where I've spent the last 17 years. I reached out and touched the structure with my warp eye, pushed my perception into it, not to observe but to understand, and the structure pushed back, flooding my mind with visions that weren't visions, with knowledge that wasn't knowledge, with truth that couldn't possibly be true. I saw the Emperor, not the corpse god on the golden throne, not the deity of Imperial faith, but something older, something that had made a bargain during humanity's darkest hour, that had traded away pieces of what it meant to be human in exchange for survival. I saw what that bargain had built, what it was still building, what we were all helping to build with every prayer and every sacrifice. The God Emperor of mankind was real, but he wasn't what the ecclesiarchy thought he was. He was a structure, a machine, a process that fed on faith and transformed it into power. And the structure I'd seen in the warp, the one the brass-faced builders were constructing, was his true form, his real body, the thing he was becoming, one prayer at a time, one faithful soul at a time. And when the construction was complete, when enough faith had been gathered and processed and incorporated, he would step fully into the warp, would become a true god. Not just a psychic presence, but an entity that could reshape reality itself, would save humanity, yes, but would also consume it, transform it, make it into something that wore human skin, but served inhuman purpose. The builders weren't demons, they were us. Humanity's future, already working in the warp, building the god we'd wished for. Already changed, already perfected, already no longer quite human. And they were waiting patiently for the rest of us to join them, to become part of the divine machinery. I don't know how I broke free. Don't know if I broke free or if they simply released me. Their purpose served. I came back to myself in the Navigator's sanctum, blood streaming from my third eye, the copper taste so strong I was choking on it. The servitors were screaming, or maybe I was screaming, or maybe the warp itself was screaming through me. I managed to navigate us back to real space, though I couldn't tell you how. Muscle memory, maybe, or divine irony. We emerged near a naval patrol, and Captain Vross immediately reported my condition to the authorities. Said I'd been compromised, possibly possessed, definitely unstable. I didn't argue. How could I? What I'd seen was heresy of the highest order, blasphemy that struck at the heart of Imperial faith. The Inquisition came for me within days. They questioned me for weeks, months. I told them everything because I was past caring about survival. Told them about the structure, about the builders, about what I'd seen waiting in the warp. They listened with faces of stone, occasionally consulting data slates, making notations in sealed files. When I finished, the lead inquisitor, a woman named Hestia, with augmetic eyes that might have been beautiful, once leaned forward and spoke in a voice like winter. Navigator Meridius, what you've described is impossible. The God Emperor is not some warp construct or psychic parasite. He is the master of mankind, the guardian of humanity, the light in the darkness. Your visions were corruption, pure and simple, taint from the ruinous powers designed to shake your faith and spread heresy. Then why am I still alive? I asked. If what I saw was so dangerous, why haven't you executed me already? She smiled, cold and sharp. Because you're not the first navigator to see such things, and you won't be the last. The Imperium shows many lies designed to corrupt the faithful. We know this. We account for it. And we have procedures. The procedures involved brain surgery, chemical conditioning, and gene therapy designed to damage my third eye, to make it impossible for me to navigate again, to close off my ability to perceive the warp in such detail. They wanted to blind me, basically, though they called it treatment, called it protection, said they were saving my soul from corruption. I refused the surgery. Not out of courage, I had none left by then, but out of spite. Out of perverse need to keep seeing, even if it meant seeing things I'd rather not. I told them to kill me instead, to grant the Emperor's mercy and be done with it. They didn't. Instead, they brought me here. To this cell in a facility I'm told exists somewhere in the segmentum solar, though I have no way to verify that. A sealed chamber with walls inscribed with wards that burn my third eye if I try to open it. With servitors that feed me and monitor me, and would kill me instantly if I showed signs of madness or possession. And with one special feature. One small window, high in the wall, fitted with glass treated with psychic dampeners and null field generators, a window through which, once per year on the anniversary of my capture, they let me look into the warp. They want me to recant, you see, want me to admit that what I saw was corruption, that the God Emperor is exactly what the ecclesiarchy claims. They think that showing me the Astronomicon's pure light, year after year, will eventually break me, will make me see that my visions were lies and my faith was misplaced. But every year, when they open that window and force me to look, I see the same thing. The structure is larger now. The builders more numerous, the threads connecting it to real space grown thicker, stronger, fed by 1,000 years of accumulated faith. It's almost complete, I think. Another century, maybe 2, and it will step fully into being. And every year, one of the builders turns and looks at me through that window, through the dampeners and the null fields and the thousands of light years of empty space. It sees me, recognizes me, remembers me, and it beckons again, patient and inevitable, because it knows what I know, that I'm already part of the construction, that everyone is, that every prayer we speak and every candle we light and every heretic we burn is another brick in that impossible edifice, that we're building our own God whether we want to or not, whether we understand it or not, whether it saves us or devours us. The copper taste never leaves my mouth now. It's gotten stronger over the years, mixed with incense and machine oil and the psychic residue of 10,000 years of accumulated faith. Sometimes I think I can hear machinery grinding behind my thoughts, prayers spoken in voices that are no longer quite human. They tell me I'm mad, tell me my Navigator gifts have curdled into delusion, that my prolonged isolation has spawned fantasies of cosmic significance. Maybe they're right. I have no way to know anymore. The wards on these walls cut me off from the warp, except for that one annual glimpse, and my memories have gone strange and fluid, mixing with dreams and visions until I can't tell which experiences were real. But I remember the beckoning figure. Remember its patient gesture, its absolute certainty that I would eventually understand. And I remember what I felt in that moment when the structure flooded my mind with its terrible truth. Not horror. Not after that first instant of shock. What I felt was relief. Because if what I saw was real, if the God Emperor truly is becoming something vast and inhuman and beyond our understanding, then at least there's purpose. At least the suffering means something. At least when they transform us into those brass-faced builders, when they incorporate our souls into that divine machinery, we'll serve some function greater than simply feeding the warp's eternal hunger. We'll be tools in the hands of a God. Eternal, purposeful, perfectly used. No more confusion, no more doubt, no more desperate searching for meaning in an uncaring universe. Just service, just function, just the blessed certainty of knowing your place in the grand design. That's what terrifies me more than anything else I've seen. Not the structure itself, not the builders, not even the truth about what's being built. What terrifies me is how seductive it is, how much I want it to be true, how some nights I press my face against the wall and whisper prayers to that distant construction, begging it to claim me already, to stop making me wait. The copper taste intensifies when I pray, becomes almost pleasant, almost sweet, and sometimes, in the moment between waking and sleep, I feel brass cables sliding through my veins like roots seeking soil. I've stopped reporting these symptoms to the servitors, stopped asking for psychiatric evaluation or chemical treatment, because I know what it means, and I know there's no point in fighting it anymore. The structure doesn't need to claim me violently, doesn't need to pull me screaming into the warp. It's patient. It can wait. It's been waiting for 10,000 years already, fed by every prayer and every sacrifice and every desperate plea for salvation. One more Navigator's soul won't make much difference to its completion, but it will make a difference to me, because when I finally join those builders, when they strip away everything that makes me individual and transform me into a perfect tool of divine purpose, I'll finally stop tasting copper. I'll finally stop seeing the structure behind my eyelids. I'll finally stop wondering if what I witnessed was truth or madness. I'll just be part of the construction, another component in the God machine, another prayer given form. And maybe that's what the Emperor always intended. Maybe that's what he's been building all along, not an empire of humans who serve him, but something that incorporates us so thoroughly that human and divine become indistinguishable. Maybe that's what salvation looks like. When you're desperate enough to accept any answer, they'll open the window again in 43 days. My wardens are punctual, even when dealing with what they consider a mad heretic. They'll force me to look at the Astronomicon, to gaze upon the Emperor's light, to see the purity of humanity's faith. And I'll look, because I have no choice. Because even with the dampeners and null fields, even from this cell at the edge of everything, I'll be able to see what they can't. The structure, vast and patient, almost complete now. The builders at their eternal work, shaping faith into substance. And that one figure, that patient beckoner, still gesturing for me to approach, to accept, to understand that this was always inevitable, always necessary, always the only way humanity could survive in a universe that wants us dead. I've been thinking lately about writing this all down, about leaving some record of what I've seen. But who would I write it for? The Inquisition already knows. They must know. Why else would they have cells like this? Procedures for navigators who see too much, protocols for managing knowledge that can't be allowed to spread. They must have hundreds like me scattered across the Imperium, maybe thousands, all of us witnesses to the same terrible truth, all of us waiting for the construction to be complete. We're insurance policies, I think. Living reminders of what happens when someone looks too deep into the Astronomican's light. The Inquisition shows us to young navigators sometimes, I'm told, brings them to our cells and lets them see what madness looks like. What happens when you stop trusting the Navis Nobelite's training and start asking questions the Imperium can't answer? Look, they tell the initiates, look at what happens when you think you've seen something impossible. When you convince yourself that the God Emperor is anything other than our protector and savior. When you let the warp's lies corrupt your sacred duty. And the young navigators look at us with horror and pity, and they promise they'll never let it happen to them. They'll stay focused on their duty, trust in the Astronomican, ignore any visions that contradict the Ecclesiarchy's teachings. They'll be good tools, faithful tools, tools that don't ask questions or see patterns or notice what's being built behind the light. Most of them keep that promise, but some don't. Some eventually see what I saw, or something like it, and they end up in cells like mine. The cycle perpetuates itself. The construction continues. The God machine grows larger year by year, prayer by prayer, soul by sacrificed soul, and one day it will be complete. One day the builders will add the final component, speak the final prayer, and the structure will awaken fully into being. What happens then? I don't know. Maybe the Emperor stands up from the golden throne and strides into the warp, a god made real through sheer accumulated faith. Maybe he pulls all of humanity into that divine machinery, transforms every living soul into a component of his vast and terrible form. Maybe he saves us from the ruinous powers by becoming something greater than they are, something that can reshape the warp itself. Or maybe he just continues what he's already doing. Maybe the construction is never meant to be complete, just endlessly expanded, endlessly fed. Maybe we'll spend the next 10,000 years building it higher and wider and deeper, adding more and more souls to its structure, until every human who ever lived has been incorporated into the God machine's workings. Maybe that's what immortality looks like. Maybe that's what salvation means. Not eternal life in any recognizable form, but eternal purpose, eternal function. Every soul preserved and perfected and put to use in the greatest work imaginable, the construction of a god. The copper taste is so strong now I can barely swallow. My third eye waters constantly, though I keep it closed. The wards on these walls burn like fire against my skin, and I know it's because some part of me is already in the warp, already being pulled toward that distant structure. My body's still here in this cell, still breathing recycled air and eating corpse starch, but my essence is leaking out grain by grain, prayer by prayer. The servitors have noticed, I think. They watch me more carefully now, their brass shutters clicking with increased frequency. They're waiting for me to show signs of possession, waiting for some demon to wear my skin or some chaos taint to manifest. But it won't be a demon that takes me. It'll be something that wears the Emperor's face, something that speaks with the authority of 10,000 years of accumulated faith, something that looks like salvation if you squint hard enough and don't ask questions. I used to wonder if I should try to warn people, if I should somehow get a message out to the Imperium at large, tell everyone what's being built in their name, what their prayers are feeding. But who would believe me? And even if they did believe, what could they do? Stop praying? Stop having faith? The Imperium runs on faith. Without it, we'd splinter apart into a million warring fragments, easy prey for Xenos and Chaos alike. We need the God Emperor, or at least we need to believe in him. We need that Astronomican burning across the galaxy, guiding our ships through the warp. We need that structure being built in our name, even if we don't understand what it is, or what it will become. Because the alternative is extinction, pure and simple. Humanity cannot survive in this universe without something greater than itself to believe in, to pray to serve. So maybe what I saw was exactly what it needed to be. Maybe the God machine is precisely the right tool for our survival, even if the cost is everything we consider human. Maybe being transformed into brass-faced builders is preferable to being devoured by tyrannids, or enslaved by drukari, or corrupted by daemons. Maybe eternal servitude in a divine construction is the best possible future we can hope for. I almost believe it sometimes. Almost convince myself that what terrified me was actually beautiful, that the beckoning figure was offering salvation rather than damnation. Almost. But then I taste copper again, and I remember the builder's empty eyes, and I know that whatever's being offered isn't salvation in any meaningful sense. It's transformation, consumption, the complete erasure of individual will in service to something vast and incomprehensible. It might save humanity's genetic material, might preserve our species in some technical sense, but it won't save us, won't preserve anything that makes human life worth living, unless that's the whole point. Unless human life isn't worth living, not in a universe like this, unless the only rational response to cosmic horror is to become something equally horrific, to match the warp's madness with our own calculated insanity, unless the God Emperor looked at what chaos demanded and decided the only winning move was to become something worse. I think about that a lot in this cell, think about what it means to be human in the 41st millennium, in an age where humanity's protector might be something more terrible than the threats we face. Think about what choices the Emperor made, what bargains he struck, what prices he paid to keep our species alive. And I think about what choices we're all making, every day, every prayer, every sacrifice. We're choosing to feed that structure, whether we know it or not. We're choosing to become part of the divine machinery. We're choosing brass faces and cable veins and eternal purpose over messy, complicated, finite human existence. Maybe that's the real horror I saw. Not what's being built in the warp, but what we're willingly becoming. Not the structure itself, but our eagerness to be incorporated into it. Our relief at finally having a clear purpose, a definite role, a guaranteed place in something eternal. We're not being forced. Not really. We're walking toward that beckoning figure with open arms, desperate to be transformed, desperate to stop bearing the weight of individual consciousness and choice and doubt. We want to be tools. We want to serve. We want our suffering to mean something more than just suffering. And the structure gives us that, gives us meaning and purpose, and the comfort of knowing we're part of something greater. All it costs is everything that makes us individual, everything that makes us human. Fair trade, in an empire that's been dying slowly for 10,000 years. Fair trade when the alternative is chaos and extinction. Fair trade when you're desperate enough. The window will open in 41 days now. I've been counting, though I don't know why. Habit, maybe, or hope that this year will be different, that I'll look into the warp and see only the Astronomican's pure light, that the structure will have vanished or been revealed as illusion, that the builders will have completed their work and moved on to some other project. But I know what I'll see. The same thing I've seen for 17 years. The structure, larger now, more complete. The builders at their work, and that patient figure, still beckoning, still waiting for me to accept what it's offering. Maybe this year I'll accept. Maybe I'll stop fighting and let the transformation take me. Let brass cables replace my veins and clockwork replace my heart. Maybe I'll join those builders in their eternal work, become part of the God machine they're constructing prayer by prayer, soul by soul. Maybe that would be easier than staying here in this cell, tasting copper and feeling myself leak away bit by bit. Maybe transformation is preferable to this slow erosion, this gradual dissolution of everything I used to be. Or maybe I'll keep refusing. Keep holding on to this failing meat body, and this damaged navigator's eye, and this cell with its burning wards. Keep being a testament to what happens when someone sees too much, knows too much, understands too much. Keep serving as a warning to young navigators who think they can handle the truth. Either way, I'm part of the construction now. We all are. Every human in the Imperium, every prayer spoken, and every candle lit, And every sacrifice made, we're all building something in the warp, whether we know it or not. All feeding the God machine with our faith and our suffering and our desperate need to believe that it all means something. And maybe it does mean something. Maybe the structure being built is exactly what humanity needs to survive the next 10,000 years. Maybe the Emperor knew exactly what he was doing when he made whatever bargain created this process. Maybe we should be grateful for the chance to become eternal tools in divine hands. I don't know anymore. Can't trust my own thoughts. Can't separate truth from delusion. Can't tell if the copper taste in my mouth is psychic taint or divine blessing. Can't tell if the builders are demons or angels or something beyond both categories. All I know for certain is that in 41 days, I'll look through that window again. I'll see the structure, vast and patient. I'll see the builders at their work. I'll see that beckoning figure, still waiting, still offering transformation. And some part of me, the part that's already half brass, already half transformed, will want to accept. The Emperor protects, they always say. The Emperor protects. They never mention what he protects us from, or what he might transform us into in the process. They never mention the price of protection, or what we're building with every prayer. They never mention that maybe, just maybe, the things we worship become real if enough of us believe hard enough, and that maybe what becomes real isn't always what we imagined. The copper taste is everywhere now. In my mouth, in my lungs, in the air I breathe. It's the taste of accumulated faith, of 10,000 years of desperate prayer, of humanity's collective need for salvation given physical form. It's the taste of the God machine being built in our name. And I think I can't be certain, can't trust my perceptions anymore, but I think I'm starting to like it.